Hello and welcome to the Indiana Lawyer Podcast, your source for news and Hoosier law, brought to you by Taft. I'm Alexa Shrake, Indiana Lawyer reporter, and your host this week. As always, I'm here in our Monument Circle studio with managing editor Daniel Carson and reporter Maura Johnson to give you the rundown on the latest legal news. Plus, I chatted with Allen County Bar Association President Sarah Beiswanger. So let's get started. Today is Wednesday, July 10th, 2024, and these are your headlines. Maura, you have news from the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. What can you tell us?
The 7th Circuit Court of Appeals vacated a man's district court sentence for using a storage unit in a drug operation, ruling the lower court failed to establish that the storage unit was used primarily to distribute the drugs. According to court records, Travis Montgomery pleaded guilty to distributing methamphetamine after selling the drug to a confidential source with the FBI 3 times in June 2021. Montgomery was sentenced to more than 19 years in prison and 5 years of supervised release for the distribution of 50 or more grams of methamphetamine. The district court added a 2-level sentencing enhancement upon finding Montgomery had used the storage unit primarily for his drug operation. However, the circuit court stated the present record failed to establish the unit was primarily used for that purpose. Based on the record, someone accessed the storage unit several times between May 30th and June 11th, 2021, but it was unclear who accessed it and for what purpose. Montgomery's sister leased the unit, and the government only presented 3 occasions where Montgomery used the unit to sell drugs. Since the record couldn't show who accessed the storage unit and why, the circuit court said the district court didn't have proof to claim Montgomery was using it to distribute drugs. In vacating the district court's judgment, the circuit court remanded the case for further proceedings.
Thanks, Maura. U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Indiana Magistrate Judge Susan Collins has announced her retirement plans. Collins plans to retire from the court's Fort Wayne division in July 2025 after 10 years on the bench. Prior to her appointment, she served 12 years as an assistant U.S. attorney in Hammond and then 16 years as a prosecuting attorney for the Lake County Prosecutor's Office. The district judges of the U.S. District Court appoint magistrate judges to terms of 8 years, and magistrate judges are eligible for reappointment to successive terms. A magistrate judge may retire after reaching 65 years of age and serving more than 8 years. A public notice seeking applicants to fill the vacancy created by Collins' retirement is posted on the Northern District of Indiana's website. Now, going back to Maura, what can you tell us about a poll Hoosier voters participated in?
A new poll by the Abortion Rights Political Action Committee, Our Choice Coalition, found that 64% of surveyed Hoosiers believe abortion should be legal in all or most cases, the Indiana Capital Chronicle reported on June 24th. The poll also revealed 58% believe Indiana's current abortion ban is too restrictive. The survey, conducted in May among 1,275 registered voters, is nearly equally divided between Democrats and Republicans and by gender and age. Other highlights of the poll found that 70% of respondents are less likely to support incumbents who voted for the 2022 abortion ban, and that 78% want direct ballot access through an initiative or referendum on Indiana's abortion ban. The Hoosier state was the first to enact a near-total ban on abortion after the United States Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, the 1973 decision legalizing abortion, in June 2022. Indiana bans all abortions except in cases of rape or incest, fatal fetal anomaly, or a serious risk to the health or life of the mother. There are, however, time restraints on when abortions can be legally obtained. The committee's poll also shows how residents feel about other reproductive matters. 95% of respondents oppose restricting access to birth control, including IUDs. 92% oppose making in vitro fertilization illegal. This poll is believed to be the first to do a deep dive into how Indiana voters feel about abortion and reproductive rights since 2022. The upcoming November election is the state's first general election since the abortion ban went into effect.
Next, Daniel, the U.S. Supreme Court handed down several opinions last week before they went on break. What can you tell us about one that had to do with a former Indiana mayor?
The United States Supreme Court overturned the bribery conviction of a former Indiana mayor in an opinion that narrows the scope of public corruption law. The High Court's 6-3 opinion along ideological lines sided with James Snyder, who was convicted of taking $13,000 from a trucking company after prosecutors said he steered about $1 million worth of city contracts the company's way. The decision continues a pattern in recent years of the court restricting the government's ability to use broad federal laws to prosecute public corruption cases. The justices also overturned the bribery conviction of former Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell in 2016, and the court sharply curbed prosecutors' use of an anti-fraud law in the case of ex-Enron CEO Jeffrey Skilling in 2010. Snyder, a Republican, has maintained his innocence, saying the money was payment for consulting work. His attorneys argued before the High Court that prosecutors hadn't proved there was a quid pro quo exchange agreement before the contracts were awarded, and that prosecuting officials for gratuities given after the fact unfairly criminalizes normal gift giving. The Justice Department countered that the law was clearly meant to cover gifts corruptly given to public officials as rewards for favored treatment. But Justice Brett Kavanaugh, writing for the conservative majority, said, quote, "The government's interpretation of the statute would create traps for unwary state and local officials," end quote. Snyder was elected mayor of Portage in 2011 and was re-elected 4 years later. He was indicted and removed from office when he was first convicted in 2019.
Thanks, Daniel. Indiana Supreme Court responded to Governor Eric Holcomb and Attorney General Todd Rokita's motion to set an execution date for Joseph Corcoran. The High Court stated that the Indiana Public Defender had 15 days to respond to the motion. If a response isn't filed by July 11th, then the justices will enter an order setting an execution date. Corcoran was convicted of 4 murders in 1997 and exhausted all possible appeals in 2016. He's been waiting for his execution in Indiana prisons since that time. There hasn't been an execution in the Hoosier state since 2009. There are currently 8 men on Indiana's death row, including Corcoran. No one has been added to the state's death row since 2014. Corcoran, who killed his brother and 3 other people, asserted an insanity defense based upon his diagnosis as having a paranoid personality disorder, according to the Clark County Prosecutor's Death Row website. Corcoran's mental health has been an issue over the life of the case. His conviction was overturned at least once, but was later reinstated. Corcoran can still seek clemency or a pardon in his case. At least 3 death sentences have been commuted by governors, 2 by Democrat Governor Joe Kernan and 1 by Governor Mitch Daniels in 2005, according to the Indiana Capitol Chronicle. Now, Maura has news of a southern Indiana man being found guilty of 2 murders.
A Vanderburgh County man is facing decades in prison after a jury convicted him of murdering 2 men in 2023. The jury found John Cameron Parker guilty of murdering Michael Blankenship Jr. and Mitchell Greathouse. Parker could face up to 65 years for each count of murder. According to court records, on the evening of October 21, 2023, Parker and his 2 co-conspirators drove to the 2600 block of Mount Vernon Avenue in Evansville, where Parker shot the victims. Surveillance footage captured Parker walking into the residence at approximately 7:50 p.m. and leaving hastily at 7:51 p.m. The footage also captured a vehicle in the alley behind the residence carrying 3 individuals, a driver, a lookout, and Parker. Human blood was later found on the vehicle's door handles. After the murders, Parker and his lookout, Caden Harms, burnt their clothes. Harms admitted his involvement in the murders soon after the shooting, later pleading guilty to aiding in a murder. At Parker's trial, the jury took less than 3 hours of deliberation before finding him guilty. His sentencing is scheduled for July 23rd in the Vanderburgh County Circuit Court. The Courier and Press reported that Harms reached a plea agreement on the 2 murder charges in May and was sentenced to 45 years on each count to be served concurrently. The 3rd man seen with Parker and Harms, identified as Richard D. Garrett, has a change of plea and sentencing filed for August 16th.
A new lawsuit in the Northern District alleges the Elkhart Veteran Foreign Wars Post violated the American Disabilities Act by banning a veteran for having his service dog on the property. Forrest Ludwig was with his son at the VFW post in Elkhart dining with family when a post officer informed them they had to leave unless the dog was removed. Ludwig uses the dog to assist him in walking and standing up. Ludwig's son also had his service dog with him. The son's dog alerts him when his blood sugar level is low and diverts him away from situations in which he might get into a fight. He's been diagnosed with hypoglycemia, neurodivergent brain activity, dyslexia, and knee issues. An Elkhart City police officer later arrived but left without taking any action after Ludwig explained why he and his son had the dogs. Ludwig was informed by post officers that he had been banned from the property, but never received a protective order or any other legal prohibition issued against him. Negotiations with the national and Indiana VFW leadership were allegedly unsuccessful. The lawsuit seeks declaratory judgment and injunctive relief. And finally, to wrap up this week's headlines, I am working on a story about an Indiana University Robert H. McKinney School of Law graduate and police officer's new book. Casey Seaton dives into everyday police life in his new book. He said writing the book was unintentionally therapeutic for him. You can read all about Seaton and his book, Between Mayberry and the Military, in our July 17th issue.
Taft, today's modern law firm. At Taft, we cultivate a highly respectful, transparent workplace that fosters creativity, teamwork, inclusion, and diversity. We couple our culture with a client-first approach, rewarding lawyers who understand their clients' goals and work to deliver success. Taft, the modern law firm. To learn more, visit taftlaw.com.
I have with me today Sarah Beiswanger, Allen County Bar Association president. Sarah works as an attorney at the Social Security Administration. She has worked there for 7 years in August. And you're also a graduate of Georgetown University, right?
That's correct.
Awesome. What kind of led you to Indiana?
I am from Fort Wayne originally, and I went to Notre Dame and then came back to Fort Wayne. I actually started as an assistant to the assistant as the in the Fort Wayne Mad Ants basketball team, which was in the NBA. It's now called the G League. So I started that as soon as I graduated from college. And I had been looking for jobs around the state, but it was just kind of a coincidence that that team was starting just at the same time that I graduated from college. So came back to Fort Wayne, worked for the Mad Ants for 5 years. And then my boss was a lawyer. His wife was a lawyer. A couple other high-ranking people in our leadership were lawyers. And so I wanted to keep working in business, but they said, oh, no, if you're going to go back to school, you should go back to law school instead of business school. And I was like, okay, we'll try it. So, I mean, the rest is history, I guess. I went to law school at Georgetown in DC and loved it. And then right before I had left Fort Wayne to move out there, I met a guy and we started dating. And so we did long distance for 3 years and then we stayed together and we're now married, but we live here in Fort Wayne and have 2 kids and are very happy.
So to start, how did you, how long have you been involved with the Allen County Bar Association?
I became an attorney in the fall of 2015, and I almost immediately joined their new lawyer section just because I wanted to meet other attorneys. I was brand new to the field and just wanted to connect with other people and network and just kind of learn the ropes and kind of in a structured environment. So I joined the new lawyer section right away and met some people. And then as I gradually got more involved, I was appointed to the board and started helping with, I think it was just kind of a natural progression of I wanted to get more and more involved. And they said, well, as a board member, you are kind of the one in charge of being involved in everything. So I actually am just finishing up my term as immediate past president. So I've been on the board, I think, for like 5 years. And just as a member and then gradually up through the officer ranks. So it was exciting to kind of see that the hard work that I put into it just in those first couple of years paid off as I kind of went through the leadership and just gradually got more and more responsibility.
Did you ever expect that you would become president of the association?
No, I didn't. They actually had just changed, I think, the bylaws right when I was coming onto the board because they said, oh, you're
we want to have a new lawyer. We want this perspective, and we want to like enshrine that in the bylaws to make sure we have this perspective. So we're like, oh, I'm just the token new lawyer. I'll just be sitting over here in the corner, talking about all the things the kids these days talk about. So a couple years in, somebody said, "Do you want to join the track to become the president?" I was like, okay, like that's never going to happen. Like somebody's going to figure me out and boot me off before I become the full-time president. But of course, that didn't happen. And it's been really great. I've actually gotten to meet quite a few different people because we have 2-year terms. So people are always, every once in a while, somebody else will come in and move off, and just like learning about how to run a board and how to work with other people and collaborate and how to give advice and like how to be an effective leader without actually being a leader, because we have an executive director. So it was kind of learning how to just give advice as opposed to running things day to day. Whereas in my job with the Mad Ants, I had kind of run like the things. Like I did all the things. I had my hands involved in everything. So I was a vice president there. So I was not the one in charge, but like I said, my hands were in everything. I was helping the players move into their apartments, cleaning up the apartments after the players moved out. It was just like a little bit of a shift from you have to do the dirty work yourself to being one on the board where you kind of just oversee everything and give advice. So it was interesting. I was kind of glad to have a long lead up towards the actual president, just kind of learning along.
So what have been some of your goals for the association as president?
As president, my goal was to emphasize things like helping with our legal line, which helps people who can't afford a lawyer get some type of legal assistance, even if it's just like we have this legal line. So it's just a limited advice kind of situation where people can call in for free once a week, but it's still a resource that a lot of people who don't have the means to actually go out and afford a lawyer, it's still something that can get them started on their journey. So a lot of the times it just like seemed a very tangible way for our bar association to get involved and to actually help the community, because there are these people who, maybe they don't know any lawyers, maybe they don't know anything about what the problem they had, even if the problem doesn't actually turn out to be a legal problem, it's always a problem where they need some type of advice. And I thought that our bar association was in a position to actually give not only legal advice, but more practical advice too, such as directing people to other resources. So I was really wanted to emphasize that aspect of making sure that was supported and making sure trying to get more people involved. And then the other one was diversity and inclusion, and working with the Bar Association also has a bar foundation that does some of the more, just like more traditional nonprofit things and fundraising and giving grants and stuff. So I started working with the Bar Foundation as well to make sure that we were emphasizing diversity and inclusion. So there are a couple other attorneys and I who started a diversity and inclusion committee. And one of our biggest things that we were able to do is form a diversity and inclusion scholarship for people who are just graduating from undergrad or going to law school. So that is now in its 3rd year. So I'm really proud of how much we were able to do, just kind of starting from scratch and to kind of build up that part of the Bar Association as well.
Did you see any challenges for the bar this year? If you did, how were those handled?
This year and for the past several years, just coming out of COVID, we've noticed that there have been some just bigger changes to our fundraising model. So in the past, and I think a lot of bar associations have operated this way, the Indiana Supreme Court said you have to get whatever it was, most of your CLE hours in person. So the Allen County Bar Association made a lot of money doing that. That was our primary bread and butter way of bringing in income. Was we hosted CLEs, we brought in different people, and then we used that money to kind of keep the association going and keep the other programming going as well. So as with COVID, the Indiana Supreme Court said you can get all of your CLE credits online. And then after COVID kind of waned down, they said, we're going to keep that just indefinitely into the future. We're going to let you keep getting CLE however you want to get on, whether it's in person or online. So it's just kind of been a different business model. And we've struggled with how do we keep up when there are different places now where people can get CLE for either very low cost or for free, and they can do it online. So it's just been trying to manage how external factors have impacted the current business model. So we're still kind of going through that and trying to figure out what our next steps are. It's going to look different because the way that we're used to bringing in money is not the way that's working anymore. So our executive director, I know, has been in contact with other bar associations around the state and has kind of brainstormed with how are you guys dealing with this and how are we going to deal with it. And we just recently had a meeting with our foundation, and I think we're really going to have some good brainstorming. We've got a lot of smart people on both boards. So I'm excited to see what kind of new things we can come up with and where we can lead the bar association kind of into the future, since our past business model is not working as well.
What is something that you're looking forward to for the association, in the future?
Well, I think other associations and even the Indiana Supreme Court are looking at the question of what do we do to kind of combat the lower percentage of people who are going to law school and coming out and actually becoming lawyers. So I know that's a big problem, especially in more rural areas. And even in Fort Wayne, which is the state's second biggest city, we're having trouble attracting new attorneys. So it's definitely not something that we face alone, but I am excited to see what kind of things that both here in Allen County and in Indianapolis and across the state, we can kind of come up with to see how we can, I don't want to be too dramatic, but I think we're going to have to make some fairly big changes to how the legal profession looks going into the future. And I'm glad that we're trying to be proactive and make sure that the integrity of the position as a lawyer and the kind of work that we do is upheld, while also trying to account for kind of the practical aspects of if we don't have enough people to do this or they're not located in the right spot, how do we make sure that everybody has access to attorneys and has access to justice more broadly? I mean, that's something that people have looked at and at different angles, but I think now it's just becoming more of an acute problem that we need to face. And I'm glad that I think both the Indiana Bar Association and the Supreme Court are both looking at this. And I know that we've faced it locally, like I said, as well. So I'm excited to see where we can put our stamp on how things look in the legal profession in the future.
So yeah, kind of switching, more about you, what kind of inspires you? Is it somebody, with the association or be anything?
I think I am generally inspired by the idea of access to justice. So it's been kind of a hot topic, I guess, recently. Do we have kind of a two-tier justice system where people who have money or people who know people can kind of reap the benefits of what a good attorney can do for them? And then where other people who don't have money or they don't have connections or whatever their circumstances are not getting as good of outcomes from the judicial system, which is sad. I mean, and I think it's actually a reality of what a lot of people face, even if people, some people don't want to admit it. I think that just even the perception that there is a two-tier justice system is something that we really need to fight against. So for me, I think that trying to make sure that everything we do as lawyers is geared towards making sure anyone who comes to us gets kind of a fair shake before the judicial system. So I work for a federal agency, and a lot of the people I specifically work with Social Security disability. And so by definition, the people that are coming that I see every day don't have a lot of money. They're in very tight circumstances. And I like to think that no matter whose file I'm working on, which person I'm trying to help, that I give them a fair shake as much as anybody else who comes in front of me. And then with the work that I've done just with diversity and inclusion, I know this has been also a hot topic over the past few years, but to me, diversity and inclusion is not trying to exclude anyone. I mean, by facet of its very definition, very name, the definition of is inclusion is trying to make sure everyone is included. And I think that despite, I guess, lawsuits or whatever is going on, I think it's important to remember that the goal of DEI is to try to give everybody a fair shake. So kind of these similar principles, like when people are asking the legal system for help, everybody should get a fair shake. That includes people who are trying to join the legal system. So if you are a person of color, or if you have a disability, if you're a woman, or if you have different political beliefs or whatever it is, different outlooks, different religions, everyone should have a fair shake at entering your profession and being able to be successful in the profession. And I think just kind of that general idea just really inspires me.
And whenever you're not, with the association or, at work, what are some of your hobbies? What are the things that you like to do?
Well, my husband, every time I start a new hobby, asks me, "Are you getting paid for this?" My answer is always no. But I just was actually working on, I'm part of our neighborhood association and just trying to make our neighborhood, we live in a great neighborhood in Fort Wayne. And I just kind of fell into the position of getting on the board and trying to make the neighborhood association a little bit more vibrant and trying to do more things for our neighbors. So I don't know if that's a hobby more than me just, getting sucked into another position. But my husband and I actually met playing soccer. So we play soccer here. We've got a recreational league called the Fort Wayne Sport Club. So we play soccer out there sometimes, and it's just fun. I mean, it's people who've never played soccer in their life to people who played in college. So just something fun for exercise. We have 2 kids, and neither of them play soccer. So who knows what they're ever going to do, but we kind of, I guess didn't pass down from generation to generation.
Okay, that'll do for this week's interview. Sarah, thank you again for joining me today. And to our listeners, head over to the IndianaLawyer.com to hear our past interviews. You can also find us on your favorite podcast apps. We'll talk to you soon.